Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Power of Intent and How to Break Through Limits. This is Tamra Fleming, and I'm going to be taking you through maybe a change in your perspective on how you look at intent and how you look at your own limits. Because, my gosh, we've spent so much time being in the world of psychology and brain information, and how do we really change who we are as human beings. And so what I'm going to offer you today is a way to look through a lens of making change with more grace and ease and support. So again, my name is Tamra Fleming, and I'm the founder and CEO of Upswing U, which is an up and coming online university that will be launching. Our very base form of it will be launching in May. However, we have started building the movement of love, collaboration, and personal growth with Miracle Circles, which I will talk about throughout this webinar. I just want to start with my why, because that is exactly why I do what I do. So my why is that I believe people have limitless potential. My whole life has been built around believing that people have limitless potential. And in everything I do, I entertain, educate, and provide experiences for willing souls to step into their full power. And so my whole entire life has been filled with personal growth and really challenging myself to grow. And I started my training career in the corporate world in 1980 in Macy's in San Francisco. And then I progressed all the way to the director of training and development, learning and development actually, for Starbucks. And so I spent my early years in the corporate world really focused around individual change and human potential. And then I decided that the corporate world wasn't for me, and I became a coach. And I've been a coach for 18 plus years now, working in the fields of energetic-based feedback, which means that whenever you're aligned with your passion, you are lit up in your heart, and you're lit up in your physiology, you're lit up in your body. And so I was trained in an energetic form of coaching that was a feedback system based on your physiology and the light that you carried in your body. And so because I started my coaching career with something that was kind of that advanced and esoteric, I became really astute at reading energy. And so as I carried my corporate background into a more spiritual background or energetic-based background, I began to blend the two. And then I became a quantum healer, which meant that I studied with a teacher and I began to understand the power of intent, which is what I'm going to talk about today, because it's a profound discovery when we really understand who we truly are. So I'm going to take you through that today. Last year, I actually put my words to practice, and I wrote a book in 45 days. Upswing, 80 mindful practices to shift your life from blues to bliss. And it came out of an experience that I had where I had, of course, been kind of going along in my life, and my life going well for all intensive purposes. And then I fell down a deep, deep, dark night of the soul rabbit hole, almost to the point where I was no longer on this planet. So it was a very deep, dark hole. When I began to come up out of that, now not only prior to that, I had had an experience in the state of bliss for about 3 weeks. And when I say a state of bliss, what I mean by that is not joy and happiness. I mean that I was actually connected to everything and all one with everything. And I really had no words in that experience to share. And so that was a few years ago in my quantum healing learning journey. And then to fall into the deepest dark night of the soul, I had the juxtaposition of life and death. And so my work became my why as a collection of who I've been, of course, across the course of the history of my life. And now I am truly in alignment, living my purpose and doing what I should be on the planet. And I want to say that to you because I'm not special in that. Every person has a very unique signature of who you are and what you are here to do, no matter, it doesn't have to be grand, it can be a small, tiny, minute piece of your life of being a very kind person. So I want you to open up your minds now for the next hour and step into a world where you know inside of you there is more potential than you're living up to right now in your life. And what is that? Get curious about what that might be. Okay. So as I mentioned, I'm going to talk about in this webinar, the turning intent into miracles. And the reason that I am going to focus on that is because intention is really how we, as human beings with consciousness, direct energy. So we're going to talk about that. But the cool thing is what we've discovered in our newest adventure, which is Miracle Circles, Make It Real Accountability Circles, is that when we gather together in a small group, we begin to amplify energy. We begin to understand what it really means to lovingly support each other and to create an intentional amplified field of miracles. And when you start thinking in terms of miracles, your life becomes a set of miracles. And so the first group that's gone through this experience in the Miracle Circles program are now, they've graduated and they're now well on their way to creating all of the miracles that they want to create. And it's what I got to witness watching that happen is not only the principles that we're learning in the program, but how it literally gets amplified in a state of love and support and collaboration without judgment. So people get to be free to be vulnerable and be who they are as much as they can in the moment to be able to expand their inner potential. Okay, so I'm going to come back and talk about that later. Right now, what I want to do is I want to dive into the power of intent. And I love this topic because it's absolutely where everything comes from. And when, whoops, hold on a second. And when you, I'm just going to shrink my head down a little bit here. Get me out of the way of the words. And with intent, you know, in my exploration of really what is intent, my research revealed that the universe was really created off of the original intent, if you believe this, which is let there be light. So what you're going to see in the next hour is you're going to see me talk about the power of the energy of light. We don't really have that in our everyday language. And actually, that's what we're playing with. We're playing with varying forms of vibration and varying forms of light. But because we're these physical bodies that feel somewhat separate from everything around us in the physical world, we don't realize that we're actually wielding wands of light every day. And so I want to help you get maybe a perspective that you may not have had already in terms of what you're doing on the planet being the true, unique, brilliant you. So with the power of intent, whatever you intend, you must follow through to completion. Now, let me explain that. So your intent happens not necessarily with thought. You can have an intent, an emotion that, motion that goes into play without a tremendous amount of thought. So we're going to talk coming up about who you are as a human being and, you know, the wrappers that we come in because of our life experiences and maybe even our past life experiences, but our current life experiences are what matter. And when we look at the idea of intent, when we create intent, we're not necessarily clean and clear with it. What we can be is cluttered, we can be not clear, we can be scattered, and I'll talk about that too. But what I mean by following through to completion, when you create let there be light was an intent. It became a universe, it became light. And so your intent, when you make an intent, if you make an intent and you don't follow through with completion, then you still have an intent out there, right? So your intent is still out there in the energetic fabric of the universe. And it's there because it's your agreement of what you said you were going to do. It's your power of what you said you were going to do. So when you don't follow through on an intent, then what happens, that's still floating out there, and then you go and veer off. And we're going to talk about this coming up, because I when we get down into kind of the detail of what the mechanics of how this really works, you realize that you really do want to become more conscious with your energy, with your thought, with self, and you don't want to run rampant in your day. So we'll talk about that. So intent is an action without reservation. It is a motion of energy and emotion that goes in a direction. And one of the examples that I use is if you drove up onto a car accident, and your human nature would say, I need to help. And so you would stop your car and you would probably jump out of your car and go to help. You didn't sit in your car and say, I think I need to help. You automatically did that. And that's what I mean by the nature of intent. Intent is a very different kind of energy if you stop and think about it. Okay, so now I talked about when you get out of alignment with your intent if you don't follow through. So let's look at this. I love this graphic because when you, so first of all, in our very, very, very busy world, we can tend to be scattered, distracted, and live in a state of constant chaos. And when we do that energetically, we are not following through on any of our intents. And so the result of that is that the world then feeds back more chaos, more disruption, more distraction, more, it could be anything. It could be whatever you create in your world. And so when you become intentional and you practice your pure intent, then you have a straight line from where you intended to go to your result of what you want to create. This is really critical to manifestation, because if you're scattered all over the place, you might create what you want to create, but it might not look like what you really think, because you haven't put the intent and followed through with it. As human beings, we have the responsibility to stay on track with our intentions. I'll mention this now, and I'll mention it again later, that do you have to focus on your intentions constantly for your intentions to come into manifestation? Not necessarily. You can, and that is, there are many different philosophies out there. But the main thing to know is that when you go into a state of scatter, distraction, and chaos, you're multitasking, you have too many things to do, you're throwing yourself into an ungrounded experience. The results that you get will be varied. They'll be very different, and they probably will reflect back to you some things that you may not want. So let's just keep it that way. So your intent is very strong. And when you begin to get in alignment with how your intent works, then you begin to kind of, let's say, master the ability to be a co-creator. Okay, so let's leave that there with what it is, because it's very profound. Now, I want to talk about a trick, a tip. I promised in my my emails and my marketing that I would give you some hacker tips on how to get yourself in alignment with your pure intent and break through your limits. So here's a skill that is really powerful and very simple. The fact that you have a mind is awesome, right? We have a mind and it does certain things. And we also have a body. And we also have, without going into this today, we also have multiple energy fields, not in only chakra systems, but in other energetic systems that go out from our body, from our center, heart center, out into the fields around us. So we are energetic beings in all rights, and we have the ability to manage ourselves and to interact with the world and to present our energy in certain ways depending on where we're living and what we're living in alignment with. So in this example, what I want to show you is that you have absolutely extraordinary body wisdom that we don't tend to use as a form of habit as human beings. And so if you look at the circle, I'm showing you that there is a heart-centered base to look at your life and at your decisions, and then there's a gut base, your solar plexus base. And I'm showing you an example of when you're in your passion, you're actually your energy of your heart. You're in your heart because you're in an experience where you're being driven from your passion, from your inner source, from your brilliance, from your knowing. And that energy expands out from you as most of the time as pure joy. And so when you are, it's very, very important to know that when you're in alignment with your true self, your higher self, you're in alignment with your heart. So your heart feels a certain way when you're going about your life. When you're disconnected from your heart and you're in your head, you're probably talking too much, you're processing mentally too much, you are trying to analyze things too much, and it's a very metallic, very clinky experience to be in your mind versus your heart. To be in your heart is this very expansive feeling. To be in your head is a very kind of pointed, and I just use the term metallic because it kind of feels like gears clicking along feeling. If you actually put some awareness around it, you'll probably feel that yourself. If you're in your head and you're not connected to your heart, good luck, because it's very difficult to get to what your desires are and where you really want to be when you're only operating from your head. You have to bring in the heart. And so let me pause that there and go over to doubt. So when you are in an experience or you're thinking about an experience, going into an experience, and you have doubt about it, then what you're going to feel most likely is a swirl, a clench, an ill feeling, some kind of a nausea feeling in your solar plexus, in your gut. And when you feel that kind of thing, you have an intuitive body knowing that says, warning, no. And when we don't listen to that and we go ahead and we do something out of alignment with that, we usually get into an experience that teaches us something. And we can call that a lesson, an experience, whatever. That's not a bad thing. That is for your own learning. That's why we're here. We're like these human beings walking around with this incredibly unlimited spiritual potential. And we are disconnected from it a lot of the time because we're so busy in our world. But if we do what I'm talking about, by tuning into these places in the body, then we begin to align to truth of what's true for us, right? Does energy feel good, or does it not feel good? Okay, now there's a question here on this slide over in the right corner, and I would highly recommend writing this down because it's a really good one to use throughout your day. So if you're going into an experience, or if you're thinking about going into an experience, you can stop and you can ask yourself, what are the feelings that belong to this intent? So my intention is I'm going to go to the gym today. Let's take an easy one. And I check into my feelings about that intent. So I check into my heart, I check into my solar plexus. My solar plexus say, oh boy, this is really, you're really stepping forward now. This is really a commitment, and it feels kind of swirly, but it feels okay, like it's not unsure, but it's sure. My heart says, oh yeah, because when you start exercising, you feel better. And when you feel better, you have more chemicals in your body, endorphins in your body that are giving you what you need to live your passion and to carry out your dreams. So I go, so there you go. I just took myself through the question. Then is it a yes to go to the gym, or is it a no to go to the gym? Do I want to follow through on my intent to completion? Absolutely yes. So there you go. Now my agreement and commitment to myself is to go to the gym. So that is actually a real one for me. So that's how we use our body to tune in. So if we're in our head and we're trying to get an answer, like I said, good luck, because it's difficult to have your mind, which is your ego, reasoning through what it is that you want to make a decision on, or follow through on an intent, or gauge it, make a decision, a choice of where you want to go. So now back to intent. If we are following through, straight through on our intent, then we are playing this all the way through to completion. And if you go down the road of an intention and you don't want to follow through on it, I'm going to show you a way coming up here about how to change directions. Okay, can I change my intent? Yes, you can change your intent. However, let me back up a second. Your intent, like I use some simple exercises in my courses, if you decide your intent is to leave the house and go to the post office, And then your intent is to go to the grocery store. And then your intent is to go to a shop and buy a gift for someone. And you leave the house and you go straight to buy the gift for someone. Have you followed your intent? The answer is no, you haven't followed your intent. So what happens when you don't follow your intent? Like I said earlier, you get into an experience, you could get into a fender bender, you could run into somebody that you really didn't want to see. There's all kinds of ways that you can get experiences in your reality. So if you're really intentional and you're focused on your intent, then you get in your car and you had the intent to go to the post office, to go to the grocery store, to go buy the gift, then you actually follow that order of your intent. Because otherwise you get into an experience that teaches you you're not in alignment with your intent. That's how, pardon the term, Nat's ass, being intentional is in your life. So being in your intent is being really conscious. So being more conscious of where you're wielding your energy and how you're choosing to use it. So can you change your intent? Yes, absolutely, you can change your intent, but you have to be conscious of your intent first to be able to change it. And so if I have an intent and I have promised something, I can go back, if it involves my other people or someone else, I can go to that person and I can say, you know, my intent was to do this, and I'd like to change direction and do that. Are you okay with that? Because my intent is in agreement with myself first, but also I've made an energetic agreement with others. And then if I get agreement back, yes, that's okay, then I can shift gears because I have now followed through on my original intent, not because I've done that original intent, but because I've been conscious enough to close the loop on that intent. So do you see how that works? Now, your mind might be thinking right now, holy cow, this is hard work. Actually, it's not hard work. It makes your life a lot easier, and it makes your life flow easier when you start thinking this way, because when you do, you're not getting yourself into a bunch of chaotic lessons. So I'm going to try my best. Now, this is a constant focus that we have every day. Everyone does, right? And so in this situation where I made an agreement and then I had to go, I couldn't follow through on the agreement. So I had to go ask the group if I could change direction. And the group says, yes, that would be fine. Then I'm okay. Now I have to go over and follow through on my pure intent. All right. Now, when I do follow through on my original intent, I get completion. Completion feels like joy, satisfaction. I did what I said I was going to do. So it's filled with integrity. When you break your pure intent, you're out of integrity. You haven't followed through on what you said you were going to do or done what you said you thought you were going to do, and you break integrity, and that doesn't feel good. So a lot of the suffering that we have in our lives is because we don't follow through on our intents. But in order to do that, we have to become really conscious about what that is. So in this example here on this slide, again, I have my original intent. And if it's just a quick thought and I don't want to follow through on that intent, what I can say, here's a hacker trick. What I can say is cancel clear. So I put an intent out there and then I don't want to do it really quick. I realize that. And I just go cancel clear, cancel clear. Abraham Hicks talks about the fact that if you have an intent in play for more than 67 seconds, it actually seats itself in the universal energy and it is in play. And then you would have to apply your following through to shift gears on canceling your agreement. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Cancel clear might not be enough. Abraham Hicks also used to say it in about 17 seconds. If you have a thought and you want to cancel it, just say cancel clear and you're good. But again, if it's longer than that, then you need to put more consciousness and intention into shifting your gears and changing your contract and following through on your intent. So my original intent was short, I say cancel clear. My original intent was really big and long, and I say, ooh, I need to go back and fix this. This is I'm not in integrity. Then what happens is you have a new intent, and so you have new energy. And then if you do that energy, then you want to follow through to completion. So I don't mean to be real mechanical about this, but I just want to say that when you start actually living your life in alignment with what I'm saying, you start to experience a lot of grace and a lot of ease and a lot of flow. When you fall out of intent, of following through to completion on your intents, your life becomes chaotic and you begin to suffer. You could, get hurt. You could get into car accidents. You could get into arguments. Because you're out of balance, and truly balance is where we're seeking to go. Okay. Now I'm going to go into another area, which are some of the negative things that we do that block our flow or get in the way of our intent. Because these are the things that we do out of conditioned human nature. So justification is actually something to really watch for in yourself and in others. Just observe it without judgment. Watch where justification comes up, because justification is really an excuse. It's a Band-Aid on the fact that you didn't follow through on what you said you were going to do, or you didn't follow through on an intent. So you get into a justification. So for instance, if I say I'm going to do something and then I begin to justify it without clearing up the contract, having integrity and clearing up the contract, then I'm just in pure justification, and I begin to get feedback or lessons on how that works, okay? So then we go to procrastination. Procrastination is the delay, and this can be in the form of resistance as well, but procrastination is the delay in our ability, our choice to follow through on something. So I used to have a greeting card that said, do one thing every day that scares you. And I have used that when I find myself in resistance or procrastinating, because what it does is it puts me back into motion with my intent. So I'm going to take a deep breath, because if you haven't heard any of this is new to you right now, take a breath, because sometimes when you're learning something new, it can sound really hard and difficult. But what I promise you is that when you start being in alignment with what I'm talking about, your life becomes graceful. It becomes more easeful. And when you go in and you have to go through these experiences, which we tend to do around in a loop, then you are in suffering. So justification, procrastination, excuses, and then there's denial, just flat out denial, lack of awareness of what your part of the responsibility was. When you look out, your life becomes chaotic, things aren't working out, you're mad, things aren't working the way you want them to do. Are you in denial about your own part of what you're doing with your energy? So again, we come into a really conscious state and a conscious way of being. Okay. What I want to do now is I want to go into and talk about how, by the way, you have a Q&A box on your screen, you should, and you can click that and you can insert a question if you like, and then I will periodically look there and check that. But when you look at conscious awareness and you look at what we're talking about here, human beings are being called, we have been being called, we continue to be called to become more and more conscious and aware of how we use our personal energy and what we do. And so with intent, you are really taking responsibility for your whole being, and you are learning how to put your pure intent into the universe in a more clear way. So as we get into talking about your limits, let's just kind of go back. You've probably read all the books, you've probably gone to all kinds of alternative therapies, potentially energetic work and therapy work to change yourself and to create yourself, and that's all good, that's all part of the mix. But we're dealing with a few things here, which are your belief system, which is your personal experience with what you believe is true based on your experiences, which also creates your perspectives, which is your point of view, your attitude, your frame of reference, and again, it's based on your experiences. And we look at your habits, so kind of what you're doing on a repeated basis that you may be aware of or not aware of. Patterns, which are habits, but patterns are loops, and they look a certain way of your behavior, of what you're doing. that you take yourself around and you loop and loop and loop until you learn how to do it a different way, and then you're out of the loop in a different way. But I'm going to come back to that. And then we have the conditions of our environment where we grew up, our society that we live in now, and the choices that we make and the things we choose to focus on and believe. So all of these things we know makes us our individual selves. It makes us our individual selves. But I'm going to say something now, that as we continue to evolve, what's happening is we are being called, when we hear the terms, we are all one, sometimes we get what that means and other times we forget what that means. And when we are all one, it means that we are all part of the same energy soup. We're all part of the same consciousness field, but we are individual human beings with a mind, with an ego, and we have options, free will, and choice to be whoever we want to be. So we are kind of like an ongoing experiment. But let's say that you're on this call today because you want to be an experiment in creating more love and more light on the planet, right? So in order to do that, you have to become consciously aware of yourself, your beliefs, your perspectives, your habits, your patterns, and your conditions. And I'm going to add this because it's so profoundly important, without judgment. Because when you judge, you take yourself in a completely other energetic direction. But when you love yourself and you just open yourself up to see without judgment, it becomes kind of a curiosity game, a curious game about who you are as a human being and what your potential is. Now, I'm going to say this, that in the miracle circles and in the work that we're doing, and believe me, it started in one place and it just keeps exponentially expanding in terms of what's coming in and what we are learning about our own personal consciousness. That in that growth of our consciousness, there is a language that's coming into form that's actually using the same words that we've used in our language all the time, but they actually, in a consciousness world, mean something totally different. So I'm going to give you this as an example. I use integrity as one of the clean examples because it's easy to see. When you think about integrity, most of the time you think about good or bad or judgment, or I've been in integrity, I've been in out of integrity, and it has a ton of judgment laid on top of it. And in actuality, integrity means wholeness. So if I am consciously aware without judgment, what I'm doing is I'm looking at myself without beating myself up, without criticism, without judgment, and I'm saying, gee, I wonder what I see. How am I not being whole? How am I out of integrity in terms of not being whole? And how can I bring myself back into wholeness? Can you feel how that is a totally different energetic question than if you are saying, hey, I'm out of integrity and I got to get back into integrity, and that means I have to do this. See how that is? That's human nature in our conditioning of how to go about doing that. So in the Miracle Circles course, we are building a vocabulary. There are right now at least 5, if not 6 words that actually mean something completely different, so that as we move ourselves from our patterned way of being, in our societal way of being, in our cultural heritage way of being, into our way of being more conscious, we actually are learning a new language. And what's really interesting about this is I have a very good friend. He and I are very, very spiritual friends, consciousness builders. And we talk twice a week just to compare notes and what are we noticing and what are we seeing and what are we learning, what are we curious about. And this conversation about this new language came up last year. And I said, it can't be that we're going to create a new dialect. I mean, that sounds kind of weird. We're going to all of a sudden start speaking a new dialect. And then all of a sudden, it started to become really clear that our language has been interpreted by our consciousness at a certain level, and actually many of those words don't mean that at all. They mean something totally different in a much more conscious, lighter way. So I just want to throw that out to you because you might want to look at some of the words that you're using in your language now and see if they actually, go look it up in the dictionary and look at it through the lens of higher light and higher energy and love and see if you can't see what I'm saying. Okay, so your beliefs, your perspectives, your habits, your patterns, and your conditioning, I'm kind of lumping those all together because they're huge. And of course, it's our life journey to continue to work through all those conscious awareness of what those are individually in each of us. And we get experiences all the way along. That is the journey. But as we become aware without judgment, we begin to see that we're also like others, that we really are not that much different from each other, that we may have had an experience in our lives that created a pattern in our lives or a belief system in our lives that is unique in terms of our story, but it is not unique in terms of our human experience. So we get to relax a little bit that pretty much everybody, because when you meet someone new, you do not know. And even if you know someone for a long time, you probably don't know the full inner story, and that it's always got all of these elements and flavors in it. So one of the ways to break through your limits is to begin to become conscious of this without judgment. It's a huge tool, and I hope you can feel that in your belly right now, because when I say that in my solar plexus, without judgment, I feel this sense of relief and love, like, great, dang, maybe I was behaved poorly this last week, which actually I did, and yet I didn't sit and dwell and beat myself up. I just noticed, I felt the emotions, I allowed myself to feel the emotions, and then I moved myself right back into a state of conscious awareness about what that meant to me in my body. What am I being shown? What can I learn? So being in the present and being in the now is really one of the hacker tricks of how to begin to become super consciously aware. If you are busy, if you talk too much, if you are busy in your head and you are not in your heart, if you are in the future, and if you're in the past, you are not in the now. The gift of being in the now, which we know from our dear Eckhart Tolle's work, is that everything is happening in the now. And if you're in the now, all of your past life experiences and everything is already sitting right there for you to access, for you to understand, for you to view. And so if you can bring yourself into the present moment, which is why meditation is so key right now, and why breathing is so key right now, because the breath actually is moving the molecules of light in your body around at all times. When you stop breathing, you stop moving those molecules around and you get stuck. And so being in the now brings you into the conscious awareness of all of the faculties that you have, the feeling of the body, the breath, the quietness, the stillness. Opening the stillness opens the door to your intuition, which is your connection to the greater field of knowledge. And you have that in any time. Everyone does. You just have to ask and listen, all right? But if you're busy and multitasking and being about in the world, you have a very difficult time of actually hearing the information that you really desire. So in this experience, when we talk about the miracle circles, we are creating a safe experience for other allies who are experiencing very similar things, because in an intentional field, we are like attracts like. So we're going to attract people that are like us, or we're going to attract people who have something in them that's in us still that we might want to change. And so that awareness comes into our field. But when we create a safe field and we create a safe ally, a friend, a buddy, a group, a system, a circle, to be able to be open and to be able to look at this stuff and move forward, then we can actually really change. When we're by ourselves, it's very difficult because we don't have the reflection, for one, and we don't have the amplified energetic support of having more people around us to be able to create the change. So I'm going to wrap this up by saying that when you are aware and you are striving to consciously be aware without judgment, and you are in the ally of other people, then you are supported in your change, not judged, and then you can therefore amplify and create greater change, quicker change. Pretty darn cool. Okay, now I want to talk about conscious awareness without judgment in a different way. So this is really important to where we're at in our conscious evolution right now. Okay, hold on. I have a question coming in. Let me just look. Oh, okay, great. Oh, hi, Melinda. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that part. Terrific. So let's look at this in another way, because it is uber fundamental that we become conscious without judgment. I just can't say it enough. It's a practice, by the way, too. But here are the elements that we're striving to really embody in ourselves, right? So self-compassion, self-kindness, self-love is a big piece of the practice that we can put in place on a very much of a daily basis. It is not selfish. It is required for you to become the human being in alignment to the human being that you truly are. And this brings tears to my eyes, because I'm going to say this in a way that I hope really sinks in, that even though in that last slide we have all of those life experiences and we have those judgments and we have those places of being that we take ourselves, I want to say that it is literally like a mask or a heavy coat that you can take off and lay down. Take the mask off and lay it down. Take the judgment off and lay it down. Take the stories off and lay them down. Take the heavy coat off and lay it down. And inside of that, behind that mask and inside of that coat is a beautiful, gorgeous, brilliant, loving soul without judgment on what you've done in your past to be out of alignment with who you truly are, but with love. So Kristen Neff wrote the book on self-compassion, and she really talks about self-love being self-compassion, which is being composed of all three components, such as self-kindness, common humanity, which you got to think about that one, and mindfulness. So what she's saying is that when we turn that kindness inward toward ourselves and we let ourselves off the hook and know that our past is just our learning, it's just there for our learning. We don't have to stay stuck there, but we do want to be called to learning what it taught us and moving forward with grace. So self-compassion is really key. Self-love, love of oneself because you know who you truly are as a co-creator. Now, this is a really fundamental piece of what I'm teaching, what Upswing U is all about, and what the miracle circles are filled with. Because if you don't begin with self-love, right, then you're going to probably begin with self-judgment, self-criticism, self-blah, blah, blah, because of your own experiences or what other people have told you in your past. When you begin to come into alignment with your true self, which I think you're getting the hint of where I'm going, is that you are a divine energy signature. And by divine, I mean just an absolute sacred body of cells with a unique expression for who you are, because you're you and you have the you to express in the world, and it's your free right and free will to do that. And a potential, and I'm saying this, a potential of pure love and light. Now, let's pause for a moment. We don't bring ourselves into pure love and light just by the snap of the finger, right? We can visit it in a day. We can express it. We can test it out. We can try it out. We can be it for a while. And then life happens and we spin around in that last slide, which is our beliefs, our perspectives, and our background and our history. So to become more aligned to your true self, you become quicker at realizing what's happening, conscious of your world, and realign yourself to the truth of your divine beauty. And when you begin to do that, there's so much grace there. You're aligned with God, you're aligned with Source, whatever term you would like to use. You're aligned with the natural way that it becomes. All right, hold on. I'm going to go over here with a question. Okay, hi, Judy. Hi, Tamra. The hardest of these is self-compassion, in my humble opinion. Yes. So I'm going to answer this. And the self-compassion, so let's break it down, right? Let's break it down. Let's say that I have an experience and I do something that I feel shame about, I feel guilt about, I don't feel good about. And you know immediately when I just said that, where you feel that. You feel that in your heart, you feel that in your solar plexus, and you're like, dang. And your mind starts spinning around on how you could have done it differently, right? And maybe you spend a lot of your time in the past wishing you had not said something you said or not done something you did. You know, my goodness, be light on yourself, because the lightness aligns you with the source of energy of love. And when you take responsibility, and we're going to talk about that next, for yourself and your actions without judgment, then you start to open and align to that greater light, that greater energy. And I don't want to get too esoteric about it, because it's really not anything more than a higher vibration of light. Okay. So if you just say, you do something and you're not pleased with yourself, you say something and you're not pleased with yourself, and you just say to yourself, okay, I noticed that I just did that. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. I now I'm going to learn. I learned the lesson, and I'm going to not do that again. Okay, now you've made a pure intent, by the way. But you're on your journey, because your consciousness and your awareness is the beginning to healing and correcting and course correcting everything in your life. So if you have awareness around it, you can begin to do it. When you have a lot of shame, guilt, self-judgment, self-criticism, it's just a plethora of an energetic field for you to practice, and just treat it like a practice. Like I said, this can happen, but it's probably not going to happen changing yourself overnight. You can begin to become more conscious, and as you do, you're going to gradually become a more conscious being. If that weren't true, we would not be having this conversation right now, because the state of our world has literally thrown a fire torch in the middle of us and said, wake up, because you're in control, you have the power, and it's all based on love. All right, so back to self-compassion and our true selves. If we begin to align ourselves with out of the suffering into the joy and into the light and into the beauty and into higher vibration, then we begin to raise the vibration not only in ourselves, but our own lives, but the people around us and everything in the universe around us. So this is no small, if there's one goal in your living life, it would be to really get connected and understand and feel your true self, who your true self really is. So when I experienced the state of bliss, I understood it was not, there was no I. And by the way, we talk a lot about self and self-love and all those things, and we will graduate out of that at some point, out of that into the no I-ness. And the no I-ness means my ego has now stepped completely in the background, and my heart and my love is leading, and everything in my decisions and the way that I be is done from a place of love. And so that's, that sounds maybe like a little bit of a panacea, but that is our potential. Our potential is actually to return to the source of love that we are, yet we have to learn our way consciously back there. So let me talk about self-responsibility. So I hope I answered your question, Judy, and if I didn't, ask me again. So self-responsibility is this really, we play with this in the Miracle Circle groups because it's a really big topic. And I just want to define it this way, that it's knowing who you truly are and continually aligning to that truth. And so everything I just said, knowing who you truly are and continually aligning to that truth. Owning your power as a co-creative being with consciousness. And so I'm going to say this in a few different ways. If you are a believer in God, then you are an aspect of God with the free will and the ability to behave on this earth the way that you choose. All right. That is a very large responsibility. When you become in alignment with the divineness of who you are, then you are more in alignment with the intent of returning to the God source or the light that you are. If you are a believer in the universe or source energy or quantum field energy, then you realize that your every thought adds to the fabric, the energetic fabric of the universe. It never goes away. And so as you are being you and you're putting this energy into the universe, what kind of energy are you putting into the universe? And I'm not saying here that you have to walk around in your life being an airy-fairy, light, bright person. I'm saying that there's a side to this love that we're talking about that is you already, that when you take off the coat or you take off the mask, you begin to become more of that. And the learning into more of that is your journey of life if your intent is to return to light. Now, you can also choose to have an intent to turn to dark. That is a choice you have, and there's no judgment on that either. It's up to you. You know, you get that. But in this world that we're working in here, we're going for a light. So I hope that makes sense. So all of these pieces come into this world of self-responsibility, meaning that we are becoming conscious of our way of being. We are becoming conscious of our thoughts. We are becoming conscious of our actions, our energy, right? What I haven't really talked about is the energy field that you send out based on your pure intent. You can say, oh, I'm just loving and everything. And inside you, you can be going, I'm so angry. I just don't like that person. And you can be acting nice. That's one of our old habits we have. But what's heard is not the words, it's the energy that you carry. So you are an energetic being with a vibrational responsibility to tune in and to bring yourself into a higher state of love and joy, which is from being in your heart. So there you go. All right. Now what I want to talk about is breaking through limits, just on the same note, which is to 5 keys, which I think are fun, which is to be aware and observe without judgment. That's one of your keys. To release and forgive the past. So a good friend of mine, Brenda Reese, is a forgiveness coach. And, you know, she really does help people, BrendaReeseCoaching.com. She really does help people go through the forgiveness process and release. Forgiveness is a self-love process, because when you do it, you let yourself free of the energy that you've been holding that's not serving you any longer, right? When we don't hold other people accountable for our experiences and we take responsibility for our experiences, then we begin to really set ourselves free and heal. Then we have embrace the truth of who you truly are, which is what I was just talking about. And then we have allow yourself to be human with grace. In other words, we all, every single one of us, are going to go daily through these experiences as we continue to turn ourselves up. So even this week, I got into a runaway train of an old emotion, and I watched it. I observed it happen. It was like I was standing outside my body, watching myself have this experience, going, wow, you really just don't need to have that experience anymore. But obviously you do, because you're having this experience. And now what do we need to know about that? And so I learned a lesson. I tuned into it and I learned a lesson about what that meant, which is, in that case, it was, you don't have to try so hard. You're working too hard. Trying so hard literally is an energy that pulls you away from flow. It cuts you off, because I did a video recently for my Miracle Circles group. It's one of the micro courses that's offered there on the idea of focus, consistency, and constancy, which is a habit that we get into when we start to become more conscious. And that whole message was sent through a completely different lens that I would have sent it through had I been efforting, trying, and working too hard. It was sent through a lens of love. That when we are in a state of focus, where we are focusing on joy and things are easy and graceful and not hard, then we begin to align with that vibrational field, which makes things not hard. So I'm going to tell you this because so much of this stuff has come through in my own experience from my own teachers, but it comes through in different waves of consciousness as you learn more about how the mechanics of it work. And so my work is to help you really see things with a new, different perspective, because when you start to do that, you start to become more conscious and you become more joyful and happy, right? So let me give you another example here. I'm going to talk about codependence. In the Miracle Circles group, the first one, we had a really strong theme of codependence. And I think if you jump into any women's group, you will find that codependence is a really strong theme. Taking your personal power, being able to be strong and directive without losing your personal power, and keeping the tone of love. Right? That is a new skill for us as women to really learn and hone. And when we do it, if we stop and we see ourselves do it, codependence, and we just stop and we don't judge it. We just look at it and go, wow, let me just see what the energetic mechanics of that was. What was I just doing there? I was manipulating. Codependence is manipulation. I was just manipulating a situation and I not getting what I want, and now I'm mad about it. Okay, whose problem is that? That would be mine, right? If I'm thinking that way. That would be yours if you're thinking that way. So when you come into your personal power with love, without judgment, you say straight out of codependence, you're responsible for your part and I'm responsible for my part. Now let's talk about how that can happen. How can I help you in your responsibility for your part and my responsibility for my part so that we get flow back in this and it starts working again? You see how I just did that without judgment? Because I took responsibility for my part, because I'm manipulating and I'm being codependent and I'm trying to help somebody when I'm stepping into their world of self-responsibility and taking their responsibility away from them. And they are not being responsible. And believe me, I have been on both sides of codependence myself. And it's not pretty because no one feels good in the end because no one has taken self-responsibility and done it in a way of love that makes it feel really good. So if you have somebody in your life that you're codependent with and you're taking responsibility for, you can just, you have to pull the plug immediately. You can just look at it, notice it, have the conversation. This is what's going on. And what I want for you is for you to feel good about your life. And so how can I help you take you in your own process of taking responsibility for your life? So that's just an example. So let me run through these one more time. Being aware and observing yourself without judgment. Releasing and forgiving the past and getting out of your story. Now, I say this because a lot of therapeutic work is about retelling the story. Well, as a person who's experienced extreme PTSD, your story can be helpful in helping you learn, but it also can take your body back into a repeat of the energy, which is not helpful. So how do you begin to work energetically and lovingly with yourself to release yourself from the past? That is a process, and there are processes, I'm going to mention those below here, that you do that. And that is work, and everybody has their own journey with that. So then embracing who you truly are, allowing yourself to be human with grace. All right. So, and then when you go through these pieces, you just keep going and repeating every day as you go through your life. So I'm just going to mention here at the bottom of this some energetic work that works in terms of, we are also consciously moving out of a medical treatment field into an energy-based healing field. So there, a lot of times if people aren't healing from cancer, they're in chemotherapy, but it didn't heal the cancer, then they turn to these alternative healing methods to be able to shift. And the reason for that is because it's actually dealing with the energy that we're talking about here. NLP deals with your brain connection to your past memories and your connections in your brain, and it helps you disconnect and rewire your brain so that if you have trauma, you don't experience the emotion of trauma, but you might still have the memory, but you won't feel the PTSD or the emotion of that experience. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. There are NLP practitioners. We will have one in Upswing U. Her name is Karna Sunby, and she will be a part of our tribe of teachers as we open up Upswing U to help people heal. Energy work of various kinds. EFT is emotional freedom technique, which is tapping, and you can actually just Google that, and there are all kinds of resources on the map that talk about tapping. Tapping does the same thing, disconnecting the neural network of the emotion from the experience, the memory, so that you can begin to create a new belief system. Shamanic journeying, there's a whole world there if you are drawn into that world. Quantum healing, and there are various forms of quantum healing that work, and there's Reiki, and there's just, it's endless in terms of energy work. EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization practice, which is also done usually by an EMD practitioner or a psychotherapist who can help also work to desensitize the trauma in your body. So I say everything that I'm saying in this previous webinar with the knowing that each one of us has varying levels of degree of trauma in our lives and in our life story. And we do need to give ourselves time, credit, love to be able to work ourselves through our trauma and heal in whatever way that we choose that works. But on the outside end of this is your pure intent, back to pure intent. And your pure intent, as you become more unconscious and more aware of what your pure intent is, your pure intent can actually lead you toward a higher vibration and healing. And when you do that, now this is the caveat, when you do that, your pure intent, if you say, my pure intent is to heal my life, which is a really big pure intent. I've said that, and I have definitely gone on a journey of healing my life. Then you are probably going to experience the things that need to be healed are going to come up to the surface. So don't get nervous if things get a little shakier and feel a little rockier before they get better, because that is the healing process. And when we get easy with that and we get love and support with that process in whatever way we choose, then we are then helping each other literally heal, and we're helping each other raise the vibrational level of the planet out of suffering and imbalance and into balance and peace and harmony. So easily said, it can be a big journey. I know I've been doing it my whole life, and I continue to do it. Yet I have gotten through a part of my life where I've been able to let go of my past story of sexual abuse in my family system, feeling unsafe. A brother died on my second birthday. My brother died on my second birthday, which when you're that little, it's a very huge energetic large vacuum that disappears. So I was dealing with abandonment, which is so common for most of us, and I was dealing with abuse of my body and my boundaries, and that's how I started my first younger years. That was all below the age of 7. So when you get set with those kinds of tracks, now let's just say, let's ease off on, do you come in to learn those lessons? Well, maybe you do and maybe you don't. Maybe you have these experiences and it's your job to figure out how to heal yourself through and return to a state of a grace of love and trust and vulnerability and openness again. Who knows? I mean, there's a number of ways to look at that, and I will not judge that. But whatever it is, if we are journeying forward in our healing path and we are conscious about what we're addressing and what we're doing, and we're doing it without judgment and we're doing it with love, then we're going to ease our way a little bit and make it a little bit easier to go into a healed state of being. So in my case, I worked for 7 years with a teacher, and it was excruciatingly painful. It caused my dark night of the soul. But on the other side of it, I came out with this massive toolbox of understanding, because when you actually make an intent to heal your life and you follow through on that intent, you get gifts. In other words, the universe says, good work, here you go. Here is your life. Here's peace. Here's happiness. Here's joy. And in my case, I manifested a beautiful man that is my soul partner, that takes care of my soul also, and I take care of his. So, it just comes in so many different ways when we begin to do this. So, okay, now I want to say this in closing. I think I'm getting close here. Oh, yes, I am. Don't go it alone. And I want to talk about that, the things I've been talking about, which is a world of collaboration and love is waiting for you. You know that women love to gather together. However, what we have done in the past is gather together in comparison and competition. And so miracle circles are all about leaving comparison and competition at the door and coming in a true state of collaborative love, taking care of one another, seeing each other's brilliance, promoting each other's brilliance, allowing each of us to step in and open up and share and become free in our vulnerability, because that's where our brilliance starts to really shine through, when we let go of what we think we should be and our perfectionism, and what we truly are as loving, beautiful, brilliant human beings. We begin to then see and hold a field of potentiality, which when we start really rocking and doing it, it becomes exponential. And then another cool part of this is, in a group, you begin to receive the mirror reflection of what's going on in other people's intentions in your own life, in your own way. So that's the amplification of the love and the energy and the collaboration. Upswing U is going to be very much driven around learning in collaborative communities. And the reason for that is because I believe online universities, which is what Upswing will grow up to be over time, that they're static courses. And so we go out and we read books and we take a course and then we're alone and we don't have anybody to talk to about it. So what I'm planning on doing, this is the true seeing, is that Upswing U will be a collaborative learning community where we can actually join together in as much love and care for each other as we can muster in our human journey to support each other in our growth and our potential. And when we begin to do that more, we begin to not only change our own lives, but we change our family systems, we change our societies, our communities, and our world, and the fabric of the universe. And that is my mission. So if you want to join me, the Miracle Circles, next ones, and for those of you who are on this call who've done one already, you might want to join this next round too, if you want to be in the circles, because we're adding, Janaki and I, who's our new facilitator, we are adding some new stuff that's going to be really fun. So I'm going to be starting a new group March 27th, and we now are going for 8 weeks. Every session is 2 weeks apart. They are 2 hours long. We've added a half an hour to them because there's so much that needs to happen in them. And when we get that energy going, man, it's pretty fierce and hot. And so there's that. And then, so it's about a 4-month journey, and it's phenomenal. And it's going to continue to become increasingly phenomenal as we lean into the intent and the energy around what these Make It Real accountability circles really stand for. So in the first group, if they were on here live right now, they would tell you that they are experiencing miracles in various degrees and levels in their own lives, and actually miracles are going to become now their way of being. So they won't be so surprising or shocking. But what they did is they came from one place in their life with a certain set of perspectives into a new layer, a new set of perspectives. And if you're curious, you can jump on the Upswing Facebook page, and I'm sure you can see on there a few of them talking about that. When you're in a miracle circle, you're actually taken into a private, secret Facebook group that's only designed for each of the groups. So each group has their own Facebook secret group, but then we have the Upswing Circle group, which is the main group, and I'm going to start being much more active in there as well. So if now's the time for you to join a miracle circle, the link here is fairly simple, and I will send this in the replay as well, but it's http://bit.ly/miracle circles. You go to that sales page and you can sign up there. And I want to say this too. If you want to change your life for the better and you want to learn some skills that you may not yet have, and you want to be surrounded by loving, collaborative team members, then this is the right experience for you. But I want to say a caveat here. Don't join if you're not sure, because this is about pure intent. And when you join this circle, you will go on a journey of expanding your consciousness and changing your life. And it will happen, and it's all for love, it's all for positive, it's all for a higher vibration, it's all for light. If you don't commit to the process, let's say you get in the circle and you decide, oh, it's not for me, or I don't have time, or I just can't be in it because my life is too busy, then it won't work for you. And we are already experiencing how that's working. And so what I want to do is I want to call people into these circles that are absolutely dedicated to the circle and to the experience for the time that you're in the circle and the experience, so that you can create what you're really intending to create. And I didn't say this before, and I now am learning this, that boy, if your intention is to do this, step all the way in, and we will have a joy of fun, and it's really quite amazing, and you will learn how to manifest and be in fun and joy and amplify your joy and your energy in your life, and miracles will happen. So I want to thank you very much for joining me today. I want to ask, is there anyone that has any questions? Feel free to either put that in chat or put that in the Q&A. I will stay on here for a few minutes to answer any questions that you have. If not, jump on over to the Miracle Circles page, check it out. If it feels right for you, remember, use your body. in your heart and your solar plexus. If your solar plexus feel a little bit nervous, you know, but you're excited, then go ahead and join, because that means you're leaning on an edge of your own experience. If you are in your heart and it's like a yes and your voice says yes, then absolutely join. And if it's not time for you right now, feel free to keep it in your hopper, because there will be miracle circles in the future and more facilitators, because what we're doing is we're building a world of miracle circles, and we're going to just take it as big as it can possibly get so that we can change the fabric of the world with light and love. All right, thanks for joining me now, and I'm signing off. I love you so much, and I would love for you to be in this world with me and with us, and if not now, soon. Okay, wait a minute. Got a question. Hold on. Oh, Pam, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Pam's a superstar graduate of the Miracle Circles, and she's been a huge supporter. So you'll be seeing more coming out in your email and on Facebook, and I love y'all. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.